only way to drive down power prices quickly is to ramp up domestic gas production. And tonight I announce our national gas plan. This plan will prioritise domestic gas supply.
It might feel like a lifetime ago, rather than just 2 months ago, that Peter Dutton announced a plan to reserve some of our gas output for domestic use.
So my message today is a well-supplied domestic gas market at a reasonable price is fundamental to the social licence of this industry to operate.
Gas remains the pivot point in our discussions about energy policy in the immediate future. Most analysts agree we need gas in our power mix, at least for the next decade or so. The trouble is, gas policy remains possibly the best example of broken politics and broken policy in Australia's rich repertoire of such things. We have an abundance of it, but somehow also a shortage, leaving Industry Minister Madeleine King resorting to verbal warnings to the industry this week that it needs to provide some cheap gas to Australians if it is going to keep getting support.
This one contract will boost Australia's already healthy exports to China by more than 10%. 3 million tonnes of LNG a year.
I think it's a gold medal performance for the resource sector in Australia, and I congratulate everybody in the bid. It is just a terrific outcome for our nation.
23 years ago, the then Prime Minister, John Howard, was exultant about the massive contract signed between the North West Shelf gas partners and China to export huge quantities of liquefied natural gas. But it soon emerged that it wasn't such a good deal.
Well, it was a very good deal for China and for Australian industry and households today. I think most of them would love to get the $3 or $4 gas that the Chinese secured long-term contracts for way back then. So I think that's a good example of just how long Australia has been missing out on the opportunities from selling our gas.
The resource rent tax has allowed the LNG exporters to write down a whole lot of the investment. So I think Australia Inc. has had very little gain from international gas export.
In fact, according to the Treasury in 2023, to date, not a single LNG project has paid any petroleum resource rent tax, and many are not expected to pay significant amounts of PRRT until the 2030s.
The Australian government gets more money from HECS repayments than from the PRRT. To give you an example, Impex, the Japanese gas company that's exported around $54 billion worth of gas out of the Northern Territory, hasn't paid a cent in royalties, hasn't paid a cent in PRRT, and hasn't paid a cent in company tax.
This week, the new Environment Minister, Murray Watt, approved an extension of a processing plant for some of that North West Shelf gas until 2070. It was contentious, both because of the need to protect ancient Indigenous rock art and because it might jeopardise Australia's capacity to cut emissions. A more fundamental question, though, is what the project will actually add to our gas supply or even the national economy.
The Western and Northwestern Australian gas markets are, of course, a very long way from our eastern gas markets. There is no pipeline between them, so they are completely separate markets.
Which makes the Prime Minister's comments this week, linking the North West Shelf with the need for gas on the East Coast to provide so-called firming capacity for renewables, a little confusing. The PM was answering a question on Monday about how he could justify the North West Shelf gas extension given its likely impact on emissions and, therefore, the human misery and environmental chaos being experienced in the floods of recent weeks in New South Wales.
You can't have renewables unless you have firming capacity. Simple as that. And if you look at New South Wales's major user of energy, it's Tomago, there in the Hunter Valley, in this region. It is a major employer there. They're moving to renewables, but they're moving to renewables backed with firming capacity.
Our political class keep telling voters, because we have a shortage of gas, we need to keep approving these projects.
On the West Coast, the North West Shelf partners are obliged to reserve 15% of their gas for the WA market. On the East Coast, there is no obligation to reserve gas for the domestic market, and the demand for gas for the export market has pushed the price of gas higher. The shortfall in gas politicians refer to is on the East Coast.
Essentially, the Queensland coal seam methane gas resource has not turned out to be anywhere as bountiful as was claimed. And so when we add 3 very large LNG export terminals on the East Coast to the East Coast and the South Coast gas demand, and the concentration of gas production and ownership by the LNG exporters, there's a shortfall, and we see that in sustained high prices.
For economists like Bruce Mountain and Richard Dennis, there are solutions to this problem, including a gas reservation policy. It's an idea which got bad press recently when a less than successful proposal was put forward by the Coalition. So how do you get around the criticisms faced by the Coalition?
By starting today. We're still approving new projects that don't have these obligations on them.
Governments need to grapple with quarantining LNG export so that there's more supply in the Australian market. And for successive governments, that's been a step too far.
In fact, both the Coalition's position on a domestic reservation and that of the Greens may give the government a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to change policy on this issue.
The Liberals went to the election with the statement that we don't have a shortage of gas and a proposal to tax gas exports. The Greens want to tax the gas industry. Industry in Australia, households in Australia want cheaper gas. All Labor have to do is make one group sad, the foreign-owned gas industry. And if they're willing to do that, they can literally provide cheaper gas in a cost of living crisis to Australian households.
The decision on the North West Shelf and what comes next for gas exploration will be a significant battle line in this parliament. Senator Sarah Hanson-Young is the Greens spokesperson for the environment, and she joins me now from Melbourne. Sarah Hanson-Young, welcome to 7:30.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
The Albanese government's decision to extend the North West Shelf project opens up a much bigger fight over the potential for exploiting gas fields further to the north, that is the Browse gas fields. What is at stake in this decision?
Well, at stake is the safety of everybody, our climate. And we know that every time a new huge gas field like this project is given the green light or the pipeline, we know that that intensifies the pollution going into the atmosphere and therefore makes climate change worse. And it just beggars belief that this week was the week that the new Environment Minister decided to make this decision to approve this huge pollution bomb at the same time as residents in New South Wales are struggling with floods. People have lost their lives, their homes, their livelihoods. In my home state in South Australia, farmers and the community are struggling with a drought, some of which people are saying is worse than the millennial drought. And of course, we all know the terrors of the bushfires. Climate change is supercharging these extreme weather events, more frequent, more dangerous, and more pollution, making climate change worse. It just absolutely supercharges it. And of course, though, nature itself is on the brink. And when you talk about the impact on the North West Shelf, this gas project, and it gives a pipeline, it green lights the further expansion of gas, the Browse project, that's on Scott Reef. This is a pristine marine area. We have green sea turtles that are endangered, that will be gone if this goes ahead. Blue pygmy whales, impacted, endangered. And enough is enough. Nature is hurting, our climate is in crisis, and you can't keep making the situation worse and hope that things get better.
Is there a mechanism for you to oppose this decision, or is this now a done deal?
Well, we really are, like many Australians, shocked that the minister has made this decision. And what's most shocking about it, Sarah, is that it's been based on an assessment that doesn't even consider the climate damage that this project will create. None of the pollution has been assessed.
Sorry, Sarah, may I just jump in there, because I think I'm right in saying that technically this was a decision that had to be made on a matter of national significance, in this case, a national heritage place, that is the very precious rock art. The law did not allow Murray Watt to make a decision on environmental damage, did it?
No, look, the way the law is currently written is so poor, so broken, that the Environment Minister can give environmental approval for a polluting carbon bomb. without even considering how much pollution there is, what damage that would do to the climate. But having said that, we know that there is damage from the pollution that is already being created from this existing plant, because this is an expansion and an extension right out to 2070. But already this project is creating problems and damage for the cultural heritage, these ancient rock art and rock paintings. That's what the science is showing us. And so this now will make that even worse.
Now, let's just talk about, I want to talk about the question of gas, because we've got a few days to wait for Woodside to respond to the Minister's requirements to put in stricter controls on air emissions to protect that rock art. So I just want to park that for the moment. So the North West Shelf, as it stands, I think contributes about 14% of WA's gas supply for households and for businesses. Where would the energy supply come from if this extension had not been granted?
Oh, look, I mean, just like what we've seen in the previous package that was shown on your show tonight, and the reality is 80% of the gas that is produced in Australia is exported overseas. The bulk of the profits go to foreign-owned multinationals. This is not about supply. This is all about profits.
All right,
and in this case, the profits of a big company like Woodside at the expense of everybody else's safety.
Let me just come back to the question I asked you, however, because while there is an issue of exporting of gas, clearly, the question is, Woodside does provide, there is a gas reservation policy in Western Australia. It provides 14% of the gas to the domestic market in WA for households and manufacturing. Without this extension, where would the gas supply for WA have come from?
Well, I think the reality is, Sarah, that this project there is already production there. This is not about creating something new. There's already production, and what this company wants to do is make mega profits by expanding what they get and to export it overseas. There's plenty of gas that is already being produced in Australia for Australian use. It's a furphy to suggest that we need to create this huge carbon bomb, 4.4 billion tonnes of pollution in order to serve Australia's needs, or indeed even Western Australia's needs. It's just not. That's not what the purpose of this is. This is about exports, big money going overseas, and pollution being created offshore at a time when it's already a stark problem for Australia that we are one of the largest exporters of fossil fuels in the country, in the world.
Let's just come back. It
just means we've got a huge role in actually reducing pollution globally if we wanted to. Well, there's an opportunity for Australia, but rather than taking that opportunity, this government has given the green light to more pollution and more damage.
Now, in this case, though, I want to stay with the issue of gas and how it fits into the energy mix as things stands. Now, in WA, as we know, gas generates more electricity than in the other states. The coal-fired power stations in WA are going to close before the end of the decade. So do you accept there is a need for gas in WA to supply the energy needs of that state?
Well, of course, we're in a period of transition, but what the science is telling us is that transition needs to be faster, quicker, and really backed properly, and it needs to stop being undermined by every time a big fossil fuel company wants to expand their profits and their exports, that they're given a free pass by the government, or indeed public subsidies. Let's not forget $12.5 billion of public money goes to this industry.
Let me just jump in.
We should be supporting the cost of living for Australians.
We'll run out of time in a moment, Sarah. I just want to come back to the politics of this in this term of Parliament. Now, Murray Watt says new environmental laws are going to be introduced very early. Is it a red line for the Greens that those laws include power for the Environmental Minister to deny approval for projects on environmental grounds?
Well, it just doesn't make sense that in 2025 you can give an environmental approval to a project that is environmentally damaging and don't even consider the climate damage. It just doesn't make sense. So, look, I am hopeful. This election has provided Labor with a supermajority in the House, the Greens in sole balance of power in the Senate. There is an opportunity to get the important, bold reforms done that's needed. But the government's got to have the courage to do that. And that means staring down the fossil fuel industry and protecting not just nature and wildlife, but our children's future.
Sarah Hanson-Young, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you.